My name's Chris. It's nice to be here. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to George, who I've known 25 years, something like that, a very long time. Started organizing in southern Indiana. His work has spanned campaigns to win financial reform, mortgage relief for ripped-off homebuyers, fights to get alleys paved, affordable child care, and more. He's worked with National People's Action family. My dad actually worked with National People's Action a generation ago. And People's Action, he's currently part of a group of organizers dedicated to broadening the reach of working-class organizers. Great to be here with you, man.
Yeah, likewise.
You and I were just talking backstage about, so, the thing about organizing, obviously, is you don't get to choose yourself affirmatively what people's issues are. You got to go out and listen. And I think there's an open question, right? Like, is care a thing that people are going to spontaneously bring up themselves if you're not stacking the deck, you're not calling them to push-pull them and say, well, what do you think about care? Like, is it a thing that at the doors, as we say, you hear? What has been the experience of the organizers you're working with?
Yeah, I would definitely say I would have maybe been skeptical that care would come up on the doors. But addition where I work, we launch new organizing projects from scratch to reach working class people that we think might be overlooked by progressive organizations. So the first organizer that came on, Bridget Flaherty, she had this instinct she could organize working class people to take action off of Reddit. And we could get more into her theory there, but she noticed she was listening on Reddit.
Hey, LaTosha.
Hello.
How are you? LaTosha Brown.
Hi.
LaTosha spent her life organizing and mobilizing black voters throughout the South. She's the co-founder of Black Voters Matter Fund and Black Voters Matter Capacity Building Institute, and among many other initiatives, and she's a celebrated jazz and soul singer. It's good to have you here, LaTosha. So you had an organizer named Bridget Flaherty who had this intuition that she could use Reddit the way you might use the doors, right? Like as a digital door knocker.
That's exactly the way to say it. And as she was listening, she found lots of moms really upset about the rising cost of childcare, and she found Republican, Independent, and Democratic moms to be upset about this. She was having her own personal experience with care with 3 young ones, and she wrote a very beautiful, I think she has a better word than rant, but let's call it a rant. And it sparked a nerve, and it became a top 10 percentile subthread on Reddit. Then she started direct messaging these moms saying, I'm loving the way you're leading in this conversation, all of that. And then if it went well enough, she would ask people to get on the phone, of which many people were shocked to have anybody from Reddit ask them to get on the phone. But she's an organizer, and I could go into more details, but she has moms in all 50 states. They are center-right, they are moderate, and they are liberal, and they are now fighting for universal family care, and they're able to move big actions every quarter. There was no plan to work on care when Bridget started. Second organizer comes on, Mike McMahon. He has a theory that really, nobody's dying to organize rural seniors in the Midwest. This is not like the coolest group right now. He doesn't start on Reddit. He basically starts on the doors, and he starts doing one-on-ones in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and some other Midwestern states. And 9 out of 10 seniors that he talks to name aging in a rural place as a top area of concern. And then when he dug deeper, he found in Wisconsin that there were 24 counties that owned their own nursing home in Wisconsin, and there was pushed by conservative county boards to privatize those regardless of the financial status of the institution, and was able to stir up a backlash in counties all across the state. So you've got seniors flooding into county board meetings, marching and driving their tractors and parades in support of the county-owned nursing home, passing the hat, raising all kinds of money, and in 8 counties across the state. I would say some of the best organizing I've ever seen in terms of people flooding into meetings. Again, no intention to work on care. We just want to work on the most widely and deeply felt issue, but 2 times in a row, it came up for us that care was that issue.
LaTosha, before you came in, I was just asking George about encountering care as an issue in the organic listening of organizing, and I'm curious your experience of that.
I can actually say a personal story. My aunt who raised me is 92 years old, and I'm originally from Selma, Alabama. She has glaucoma in both her eyes and cataracts. She doesn't drive, and I live in Atlanta. I have to drive to Atlanta to take her 70 miles to the nearest doctor that can treat her condition. And so I've had to get a second set of doctors in Atlanta. So she has every month, she comes with me 2 weeks out of the month. I have to drive 4 hours, 3.5 hours to get her, to drive her to Atlanta for care because she doesn't have access to the kind of care. Even when we were going 60 to 70 miles, part of what she would say is, I would have, because I work, of course, Black Voters Matter, I would have my Vote shirt on or my Black Voters Matter shirt on. She was like, no, you can't wear that. You can't wear that. You can't wear that in here because these white folks ain't gonna like it. And so she literally, she had a bad, and I don't know if this is true or not, but she did. I went in with her. She had a bad experience at the doctor's office where she left crying. And she attributes that, now this is Alabama, she attributes that to the fact that I came in with this campaign shirt on. And that's not a hard stretch to believe. To be honest, I actually believe that too. And so, which is why I actually got her doctors. I had to get her doctors in Atlanta. She has a few in Birmingham, but Birmingham is 90 miles away. And so that's a personal story, but I can go on and on and on where people are not getting, she's blessed because she has a niece who has resources to actually get her. There are many people, particularly in these areas, when you look at Wilcox County, a county that's in Lowndes County, that were, in the last census, it was the poorest county in the country, right? That in this area called the Black Belt, which is ironically is the same area that a lot of the wealth in this country, at one point, at the height of cotton production, 1/3 of cotton came out of that area alone, right? The area was so, it had the 3rd highest per capita income in the nation. So here's an area that was stripped of its resources. The people were left behind. It's known for the cradle of the voting rights movement. And my aunt cannot get to a doctor without assistance. There's just simply not available. And so I can go on and on and on with stories where people don't have access, basic access to doctors. There are places in Georgia where we work where the nearest obstetrician is 100 miles away.
You mentioned your aunt, and I want to stay on that for a second because I think one of the challenges of conceptualizing care as a political or policy issue, mobilizing, organizing, is its invisibility in the context particularly of things like familial devotion. That's right. Right, so it's like, you're just bringing your aunt where she needs to go. That's just what you do as a niece. That's what, if you're caring for an aging parent, you're caring for your kids. That's just the inherited responsibility of us as family members, wherever we are. How do you think that conception, or how you experience that interacting with people understanding that this is a bigger issue than just where they are embedded in their family life?
Excellent question. I think part of it is the way that we talk about it. I think we talk about care as we center policy instead of people. So every time we're talking about it like it's a play in a football game and the red team and the blue team has this particular play that they're disagreeing with. We don't really center it around people and talking about it from that perspective. And when we do talk about it, we racialize it and we put a face on it. And to kind of undermine and to strip from it, strip the value from it. Like in some way, it's also a values proposition too, because in some way in America, what we believe is that healthcare is a privilege, right? We believe that even good food, having access to good food, people are okay with poor folks buying bad food, right? Right, but some way, basic value around the care of human beings, we have reduced to some point of privilege. And so the way that the conversation around care has gone has been really stuck in many ways in this policy context, as if everybody across, I'm impacted by it. It impacts my resources. It impacts my time.
You're driving 4 hours.
I'm trying, right? It impacts everybody around us, and I think some way part of our inability to really humanize it, and not just from the perspective of victimizing. I'm not raising this from my aunt. My aunt is a retired businesswoman, right? My aunt owns her own home. She has access to resources. She doesn't have access to care.
That's a great
And so we have not been able to actually
great
make
point.
that argument around access to care.
That is such an important point, because I think the assumption is, in America in 2025, like, we all know that resources are very unevenly distributed. But the assumption is, if you have enough resources, you can buy whatever you need, and care is in that category. And I have to say, in my own experience, it's just not true. And I've been very lucky in what my household's finances are. When we had our first kid, it's like, you can have the money to pay someone for childcare and not be able to find childcare. Right? Like, it's not actually, it's not so straightforward that even sufficient resources are enough to deal with the problem.
That's right.
Yeah. I would say on your original point here around people not seeing themselves as caregivers or in this movement, I think that's like a critical challenge for us to face, because I think we use the word care a lot of time and assume everybody knows what we mean and sees themselves in that picture. I was driving down from Chicago to Nashville, Indiana, where I'm from, to see my dad, and getting close, and my brother reached out and said, "Hey, Dad's in the hospital," so I needed a reroute to Bloomington, and I was like, I don't think I remember him going to the hospital. The one time we went to a doctor after we left, I'm like, I don't think this guy is a doctor, but whatever. So I go to the hospital, and he's got a wound the size of a raw quarter pounder on the back of his leg, and they couldn't figure out what it was. And I'll just fast forward 2 weeks later, he's discharged. We get in the car, I drive him back to where we grew up on Greasy Creek Road, get out, and I go to grab the walker, and he waves that off in a second. And I guess he didn't want to see the one person that might drive down this country road see him in the walker. So I help him get up these stone stairs that he'd actually pulled the stones from the creek when he was a stronger man. We get him inside. A couple days later, a country nurse shows up to teach me how to redress this wound, which was pretty big. And as she's teaching me how to do it and I'm doing it, I'm like, I don't remember ever touching my dad's skin. Maybe that happened when I was a baby, but I have no memory of it. And as I, pour the saline on and I start putting the new bandage on, I'm like, oh wow, our legs are the same. We have the same looking legs. I didn't know that. I'm 50 something and I didn't know that. And then I'm doing meds, I'm doing doctor's appointments, I'm putting lists on the fridge, I'm cooking food before I head back to Chicago. Never occurred to me that I was doing caregiving. Fast forward, my mom on this Father's Day falls, and it wasn't her first fall, but it was the big fall, and she cracked 2 vertebrae in her neck. Her life will never be the same. We had to go to the hospital every day. We would want to anyway, but she had lost so much cognition. We had to be like, this is where you are, this is why, and this is what's going to happen next. And sometimes you have to do it 5 times a day. You had to show up to do that and taking care. We've been in the hospital so many times in the last 3 months because of other falls and all of that. And I just never thought of it as caregiving. I thought of it as what you said earlier. It's like the duty of being a son, the duty of being a parent. And I think for us to build a big enough care movement, we need more people like me to be able to go no, I'm a caregiver too. That's a campaign that should be run. You're a caregiver too. So we can see it. And then I think with that, because when my mom left rehab, she went to the hospital and she went to rehab, and this happened many times over, but we left rehab to go take her back to the assisted living center and found out her monthly care costs had skyrocketed to $25,000 a month.
Wait, a month?
A month. She had worked 50 years and saved well between her little retirement, and she owned half her house, which we sold. She had $250,000 saved. So in 1 month, we lost. So we're like, oh, we got 10 months. 10 months, and then, I don't know, we're doing Medicaid or we're in trouble. But I think the other thing to layer in is we need more people to know it actually doesn't have to be this hard. There is a solution. It's a really common sense solution, like Social Security and Medicare are common sense solutions, but I think just way too many people, and probably many rural people, don't even know it's a thing.
There is that sense with care that what you're just talking about, and LaTosha with your aunt, where when you encounter the need to do it, you feel like you're the only person. And I always have this thought, just even in navigating simple stuff for childcare, where I'm like, I always have this moment when I'm doing it, where I'm like, I've been very blessed in my life. I have a good education. I'm a pretty emotionally regulated person. This seems awfully hard for me. Yes. Like I've got every advantage possible, and this feels like a really difficult and intimidating puzzle for me. Mm-hmm. And all the people that have to navigate that don't have all the things that I've been blessed with, it can be very lonely making. That's right. The experience of trying to navigate it.
That's right. You know, speaking of navigation, I have so many stories. As I was sitting here, I'm kind of emotional about the conversation because I'm thinking about there are 5 members in my family, including my mother. I wound up being the caregiver of my mother. And just like you, I didn't realize I was a caregiver until they asked me. We went to the doctor and they were asking me a question, and I was like, oh, you asking me? I'm thinking like they're going to ask her. And so she had breast cancer. She was in Mobile, Alabama. Once again, the quality of care that she had, I went to her first appointment, and she was so mistreated. She was so mistreated. And she didn't want to leave her house, but out of care, I brought her to Atlanta with me. And she was in a hospital and this is a true story. She was given in a hospital where for 3 years, she had received this kind of, she had received treatment. And I think of myself as a pretty smart person. I navigate through a lot of different things. I help create policy. Like making a decision about my mother's health was terrifying to me. I didn't know what decision to make. And at the end of the day, I was feeling some responsibility that if something happens or if this treatment doesn't go well, it's my fault. Like the weight of that, and I didn't have anybody to help me really navigate that. And so a friend of mine had their family member over at one of the cancer treatment centers. And so I went to the cancer treatment center, but because my mother was on Medicaid, I went to the cancer treatment center, and they had taken their quota of people for Medicaid. I woke up one morning, I'm a person of faith, I woke up one morning and I was praying, and I just heard in my spirit to go to the cancer treatment center that day. I went to the cancer treatment that day. I went in someone's office. I literally begged her, and I told her, I'm willing to get on the floor and beg you. What can I do to get my mother in? And they got my mother in. Ironically, my mother's breast cancer, because she's African American, she had been treated for the breast cancer that normally black women have. That's not a lot of solutions on, right? But her father, my grandfather's half white. And I'm saying this is relevant in this story. It was a week before her death that the doctor called me and said, I remember I was in a drive-through getting some food. I left the hospital. Did I know my mother had, it's not HER2. I think HER2 is the one that black women have. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head right now. But did I know that my mother had been treated for the wrong cancer, that she had the type of cancer that normally is found in white women? And there's much more. The doctor literally said this to me. There are many more options for you now. Right, and he started her on a chemo treatment that, quite frankly, was just too intense. It was too late. 5 days later, my mother was dead. And so the level of, we cannot ignore the obvious around how race and class plays a part. Last July, my very favorite cousin, my closest cousin, it's hard for me, I can't even believe I'm saying this right now, went to the hospital. She was morbidly obese. She went to the hospital, and because of her weight, she got checked. She said something was wrong. There's always an infection. Here's some antibiotics. They sent her home. 2 days later, they called and said, we think your infection is all through your body. We need you to come back. She didn't have transportation, so we had to pay like $800
Wow.
to get an ambulance to take her maybe 5 miles. Okay, and she went immediately in sepsis, went in a coma, 3 weeks later, she was dead. She literally died because she was poor. And so I'm raising this that it is real. Every person out here, I'm quite sure it touches you and touches your life in a particular kind of way. But to your point, I think something for us to think about, too, in terms of not just how we talk about care, but if you were from the Deep South, I don't know how many people in here are from the South. Yeah. Many in the culture of the South, there was a culture in the South, and probably I think in the Midwest as well, but there was a culture that you take care of your family members that's ill. Like that was just part of the culture,
Totally, yeah.
right? That even in the living rooms, I remember when the older people in my homes, they would have the hospital beds in like the living rooms or in the extra room. They would move things. Y'all know about that? Y'all remember that, right? And there would be a family member that would actually take care of that person. Part of what has happened as costs have risen, and people would kick in, folks don't have disposable income. So you're in a position right now, it's not just the cost of the healthcare itself, but the conditions are so that the way that we would be able to take care of each other in community, that has shifted because folks have to work so much, so long, so hard just to make it for themselves that they don't have the disposable income to really be able to take care of folks. So we have to understand that care is not just an issue around the actual care, it is a reflection of what is happening in the larger community around the larger economy.
Yeah.
And it has a cumulative impact on our communities.
You're talking about some of the women in your family and the ways that race and class intersect with these questions. I wanted to talk a little bit maybe about gender too, just because I do think like so much of our politics, if you look at it as like very mommy politics coded and daddy politics coded, nurturing and care versus like strict, authority. And so many of those tropes get reinscribed over and over across a bunch of political issues. And I do think, with care, I do think there's like this sense in which like a lot of men don't see themselves as caregivers, but also maybe don't want to see themselves as caregivers because there's something a little emasculating or uncomfortable about it. What do you think of that?
Yes. I mean, in my own journey, I think I'm just sorting it out. Like I'm just noticing I don't think of myself as a caregiver, but I'm like all about, showing up and doing the work. I do remember during that bandage thing, my dad said, George turned out to be a pretty good nurse. And I was like, I don't know if I like that or not. So
yeah, exactly what I mean.
Yeah. So I think it's really there. I also think about other stuff that people do. Like in Wisconsin, there's a big effort. There's an organization that has, almost no money that basically builds ramps for people to be able to stay in their homes. Like there was a guy that my dad would trade a broken down truck or a old stove for to keep his house from falling apart when he was older. And you could argue that's even a caregiving kind of responsibility. I think another, we're talking about race and class, and you definitely hinted to rural with these long drives. I think the reason these fights around these county-owned nursing homes have been so big, first, I think as many of us, we hear nursing home, we think bad. I tour these county-owned nursing homes, and they are gorgeous. They are beautiful, they have great light, they have great staff morale. The staff that work there, chances are the person they're caring for was their teacher or their next door neighbor or their best friend's parent. And they are 5-star rated by the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And I will say in the beginning of the fight to preserve them, I was like, we're preserving a great remnant from the past. But the more I visited them, and the overwhelming support, I'm like, this is the future. This is to what I just said at the beginning of this event. Like this is Earth 3 stuff. This is the future. And I'll just fast forward. I'm in a county board meeting in Lincoln County, Wisconsin. And there's a big push to privatize the county home nursing home, even though nobody wants it. And Al Curtis, who is a retired special ed teacher, been at Pinecrest for well over the 10 years, went to great length to be at that meeting. I mean, he asked the caregivers to get him dressed and everything. He had to organize a ride because he was in a wheelchair to be there. He had to get out of the wheelchair. He was the first to testify when it became his chance. And he definitely gave the county board a little bit of what for. And he said people in Pinecrest, the nursing home, were afraid they were going to have to live under a cardboard box or they were going to get shipped an hour or two away, and what that would mean for them. He even yelled, "I don't want to go to Oshkosh," which was not a slam on Oshkosh, if anybody's from Oshkosh. It was a symbol of going far away. And then he looked all the council members in the eye and said, "You're going to be where I am someday. I need you to remember that." And every one of them squirmed. Next up was Judy Waller. Judy was a survivor of domestic violence, lived in Lincoln County her whole life. She was 78 years old. She showed up in her wheelchair. She had really spearheaded the fight to save Pinecrest. She'd gotten people to march in the parade. She paid for the People for Pinecrest t-shirts on her own dime. She was constantly in the ear of county board members. She died a few weeks after she testified. So two great leaders. I tell you that story, I don't think it's sad. I don't think it's sad that they died. I think it's beautiful that they died fighting for care in community with their very last breath.
That's right.
And they did it on care. And they did it because they wanted to fight for care for themselves, but they always knew they were fighting for it for the next generation. So I just would say, there's a lot of seniors out there that we need to pull into this movement.
I agree. You know, I think there's an opening right now, too. As horrible as things are, and they pretty bad. I mean, they pretty bad. They're pretty bad, right? As horrible as things are, right, as things are being unraveled, I think this is the moment for us to radically reimagine the possibilities. And so we have to take this moment and really recognize that the current care system we have right now is not sufficient. It's just not sufficient, right, for any of us. And so if we are in this moment where we know that we're going to have to rebuild, right, and create, then we should actually be leading and fostering a movement that centers the value of people. I don't know if folks remember, but do you remember, and I know you, but Chris, do you remember in COVID, when the lieutenant governor of Texas said that older people should be willing to die for the economy?
As a kind of sacrifice, yeah.
As a sacrifice? Let me say this. My grandchildren better not come with that with me. Listen, right? But just the thinking of that, we have been reduced to cogs in the wheel, that we have been reduced, that your value is only as good as how do you support this economy, instead of that your human life, that you have value, which is why we don't treat children. This is when I knew this when I remember in Sandy Creek, when babies were shot and killed. In this country, we didn't want gun reform. I was like, wait a minute, we don't care about the babies, and these are middle-class white babies, beautiful children, right? We don't care about babies, and then we don't care about elders. If you are not in the workforce in this country, we have devalued you. And so nobody can change that but us. And so in this moment, since everything is a mess anyway, what we should do is really find this moment to actually lean into this whole idea of we care for each other. And that includes every aspect of our society. And we build and demand that there's not just policies, but there's whole reformation of systems that will actually support that and center that. But in order to do that, you know, I often ask this question, you know, how many people, what currently exists that wasn't first envisioned? You know, there's nothing that exists that wasn't envisioned. Yeah. And we're still talking about this like we're in the Super Bowl, what policy the blue team want and what policy the red team wants. No, it is what do we want as people? How are we organizing? Which is why I love your wife. Because I do think that the care movement is I believe it is our greatest opportunity to reclaim our humanity. I don't think it's just about policy.
That's really well said. And just one last note I'll just say on that. Sometimes solutions are hiding in plain sight. Like, I didn't know there were county-owned nursing homes in Wisconsin. Like, that's an interesting thing to pursue. You know, that's a model of vision. Sometimes there are things that already exist that we don't even realize are part of maybe the solution of the future. That was amazing. Thank you both, LaTosha Brown, George Goehl. Give it up for our panelists. Thank you so much.